Thank you, Colleen. My name's Bob Surden, and I'm an alcoholic. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be permitted to kick off the 43rd Jamboree in Corpus Christi of Alcoholics Anonymous, and particularly one with a theme such as was just read to us in the Fellowship of the Spirit. I haven't had a drink with alcohol in it since December the 13th of 1979. Before that time, I don't ever remember a time in my life when I didn't drink alcohol. I don't ever remember a time in my life before December the 13th of 1979 when I ever had a drink of alcohol that I didn't want to have some more. There might have been some times when I didn't, there were a lot of times when I didn't have all that I wanted, but I always wanted more. I don't ever remember a time in my life before December the 13th of 1979 when I was ever comfortable with who I was, what I was, or where I was. See, there was something wrong with me. I knew that because people in my family would tell me there was something wrong with me. I can remember, I don't know, at the age of 8 or 9, one of my mother's sisters saying, "Robbie," which is my mother, "what's wrong with Bobby? Why is he so skinny? Why are his eyes always red? What's the matter with him?" And see, I had a cousin that lived real close to us, and there wasn't anything wrong with him. He was the most gorgeous, most handsome, the smartest, the most brilliant male child ever born in the human race. And while everybody would talk about Richard, every once in a while, when they got through, somebody would look over and they would pat my little old sweet head, and they would say, "Oh, and we love you too, Bobby." You know. They didn't say, "even though you are really screwed up." But I knew at an early age that that's the way it was. And I tried real hard to show that there wasn't anything wrong with me, or to fix whatever it was that was wrong with me. And as a consequence of that, life for me was really hard. I wasn't very good at it as an athlete, but I tried. I was pretty intelligent and did pretty well after I got out of the lower grades in school, but I was kind of embarrassed by that because I didn't want to be a brain, don't you see? I wanted to be one of the regular guys, and it was kind of embarrassing to make A's, and I sometimes tried not to, but sometimes I did that, anyway. But I wanted to do good, I wanted to please my parents. I wanted them to love me for who I was, and not just because it was an afterthought. And I really never thought, although I know that they loved me, I came from a good home, I just never felt accepted. A lot of drinking went on in my family. A lot of drinking in the neighborhood that I lived in. When I was about 12 years old, the people that lived in the apartment down below where we lived, the guy had been in the oil field business, but he stayed home all the time, stayed in his pajamas all the time, didn't do anything but drink. There was a liquor store right across the street. It was a vacant lot that you had to go through to get to the liquor store, and he would pay me money to go over there and pick up his liquor for him, and I could hear through the walls the fights that those people used to have, he and his wife, about his drinking. And, he died, and I knew he was an alcoholic. Had members of my family that were alcoholics, and I think maybe one of them at least had gone to Alcoholics Anonymous at some time or another. So I knew, and both of them finally were drummed out of the family and got divorced, and wound up on the streets and were ostracized from the society that we knew, and I knew that that's what alcoholics were and that that's what happened. My family was not well, it did not have a lot of formal education, but my daddy, one great ambition in life was for his two boys to have a college education. I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to go join the Navy and win the Korean War, but my folks, I wanted to please them too, so I went to college. And I worked while I was going to college. And in fact, I wanted to get out of the house, but I couldn't figure out how to get out of the house. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to get my life settled down because I knew I drank too much, and I was a little bit wilder than I should be, even when I was in high school and before. So I got married, but I wanted to go to school also, and so I worked full time and went to college full time at night. I've discovered that I've got the kind of personality that anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. And I kind of like to live on the edge, I kind of like to see how much I can take and how far I can go. I've gotten to the age now to where I've gone just about as far as I can go and just damn near everything that there is. So that's helped me some. But I, at one time in college, I was taking an overload. I was working 40 hours a week. I was taking 18 hours in school at night, going to school from 6 until 10 o'clock every night of the week, and from 8 until noon on Sunday. I was married, working, working full time. I also had lots of time to party, and during that period of time, I also acquired a family. And by the time I got out of law school, I had 2 children and a wife, and I had a lot of bad companions. Now, it was interesting to note that a lot of my companions' family thought that I was a bad companion, but I knew that the environment that I lived in Houston, Texas, was not a healthy environment either for me or for my family. So I decided to move out of Houston, and I moved to a small, very fine Christian Catholic community up the road a little ways from here called Victoria. And I resolved that I would practice law and become the world's greatest trial lawyer and be a successful person and settle down in this nice, quiet community. I thought that in Houston there were a lot of people that were really rowdy and what we called long ball hitters when it came to drinking and carousing. But I found out very shortly that they didn't know anything about how to drink and raise hell like some of the people that I came in contact in the quiet little community of Victoria, Texas. They were serious about it. There was a friend of mine who had an office right across the hall from me, and he lived in front of the first developments at Key Allegro, and one night, I wouldn't believe this about anybody else, but I believe it about my friend. He says that about 2 o'clock in the morning, he was on his way home. He knew he was drunk and he needed to get some coffee, so he drove up to this cafe. And when he got up to the front of the cafe, instead of putting his foot on the brake, he missed and he hit the accelerator, and he ran his car inside of the cafe, and it came to rest right next to the jukebox. And so he did the only sensible thing that he could think of to do. He reached in his pocket, pulled out a quarter, stuck it in the jukebox, and played Buck Owens' "The Race Is On." And those were my friends, and I kept up fairly well with those guys. I was active in the community, and I was a pretty good lawyer, and I became a member of a lot of civic organizations. I'm a joiner. I joined a lot of clubs. I became president of most of them. I went to church every Sunday. I became a lecturer in the church. I taught Christian doctrine to the high school seniors that were not members of my faith, and I could do that after drinking a right smart amount of booze and tell them about what the good Lord wanted them to do. I knew what everybody else ought to do, and I really knew what I ought to do, I thought. But I wasn't as good at doing what I needed to do as I was at telling other people how to do it. Life went on, and I was pretty successful. But along about 1969 or 1970, my drinking was getting out of hand, and so I decided I needed to make another change. I had the desire to be of service to the public, and I got this idea that if I got into public life, that I wouldn't be able to go to some of the places where I went or do some of the things that I did, so I ran for district attorney, and I got elected. And I thought, man, if you're the district attorney, you can't be hanging out in these seedy places where I was, and you got to be responsible because people will find out about you, and the law, do bad things to you. Ha ha! Wrong. When I was a district attorney, I really was invisible. I still wasn't rich, and I still wasn't good looking, but by God, I was invisible. One time, in maybe 62, 63, 72 or 73, some friends of mine and I went hunting. Actually, this was longer ago than that. This was about the time I'd quit being DA. But anyway, gives you an idea of the deal. I had a badge. Now, if you got a badge, and I got a lot of respect for law enforcement people, but I had a badge. And if you got a badge, you can put it in your billfold, and you can put your driver's license right here. And so when you get stopped by the law for anything, you open up your billfold and show them your driver's license, and they see your badge. And you're one of them, I'd been hunting all day and been drinking all day, and we're coming back, and we're in my car, and I got 4 guys in there, and I just resigned as district attorney, but I still got my badge. The new DA is in the car with us, and he's been out all day with me hunting and drinking, and he's in the front seat, and he's also got a badge, but his badge is brand new, and he's real anxious to show his badge. Well, the highway patrol stops us, and I get out of the car, and I show the highway patrolman my driver's license, and I'm pretty drunk, because I've been drinking all day. And the highway patrolman sees my driver's license, and I guess he saw my badge. He didn't say anything about it, but he said, "Mr. Surden, look like you've been hunting all day. Look like you're pretty tired. Why don't you let this gentleman drive?" Because by that time, the new DA had got out because he wanted to save me and show his badge, see? So he says, "Why don't you let this gentleman drive?" So I say, "Fine." So this guy gets in my car and starts off driving again, and he's furious, because he hadn't been able to show his badge. So we get across the county line into the next county, and the guy who is the highway patrolman there is the meanest guy in the valley. I mean, he has arrested everybody around, and he don't care, and everybody knows he's on that highway all the time. See, and sure enough, we're not 15 minutes away from where we'd been stopped before, and we get stopped again by this new highway patrolman. Get out of the car. He knows both of us, the highway patrolman does, and he knows the new DA. So he asks him, and he knows his family. As a matter of fact, the new DA's daddy's the sheriff of the adjoining county. And so they talk about the family a little bit, And finally he says, "Well, sir," he said, "I tell you what, you look like you've been hunting all day, and you must be tired. Why don't you let Bob drive?" Fine. No, So anyway, being a public official didn't work. During the time that I was district attorney, that was as hard a job as I ever had in my life. The guy who was my predecessor in office and who was the county judge of our county and who was my best friend, and basically we kind of ran the county, or we thought we did anyway. And it was discussed, and he was a popular guy. He was popular with the quote establishment, and I wasn't. I was always kind of an outsider and a hellraiser and everything. Found out that this gentleman had stolen just a whole bunch of money from the county and had been doing it for a long, long time, and it became my responsibility to prosecute that guy. And that was a tough job. That was about as tough as anything that I ever had to do, and it gave me the excuse of withdrawing from society and stay in my office, in my fortress. And when I stayed there, of course, I drank, and I drank all the time. And then I'd have to go out and I'd have to perform, put on my suit, and do my thing. I'm relatively intelligent. I probably have got as strong a will as anybody I know. And I could and did put myself together and go out and do the job that I hired on to do, and did a good job of it on a regular basis. But again, life was hard. It was hard to do that. And as time went on, it got harder and harder. And I decided that the pressures of the office of district attorney were too great, so I resigned. And I wound up going in with a couple of other lawyers and became the managing partner of a pretty good law firm, and I resolved that I would not drink anymore on the job. And that lasted until about the second day on the job. Without going into a whole lot of the rest of the drunkalogue, by December the 13th of 1979, in the summer of 1979, I had started hemorrhaging. My health was bad spiritually, physically, and mentally. Started bleeding out of the nose and the mouth and God, I don't know, ears and whatever, and they couldn't stop it, and I was given up for dead. And all the family came and said goodbye, and that's what I wanted to do, was to die, but I couldn't die because I knew what was happening to me, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't cut down my drinking, and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't understand why. Because I could do anything that I ever set my mind to do. I had proved that over and over again in my life. But I couldn't cut down my drinking one iota. I had in the trunk of my car a half a gallon of vodka, a half a gallon of good Scotch whiskey, and a half a gallon of good blended bourbon whiskey, and an ice chest. And I carried that with me there until I got to my office. In my office, in my credenza, I had it set up the same way. And when I got to my office in the morning, excuse me, I would go and get a coffee cup and put a little ice in it. And I'd go back to my office and I would pour me a cup of whatever I was drinking. And I would sit it in the bottom drawer of my desk. And I would sit there all day long and sip on that while I performed my duties. And I knew every day that was killing me, that was ruining me, but I kept doing it. I would wake up in the morning, I would say, I'm not going to drink today. And before I had the coffee made, I would pour me another glass at home of whatever it was I was drinking, and I would drink that until I left the home or left the house, or until my wife got up. And when I heard her getting up, I'd pour that out and I'd pour me a cup of coffee. And I functioned. And when I started hemorrhaging, the doctor told me I didn't die. I recovered finally. And he told me that if I took one more drink of alcohol, one drink, Bob, and my doctor was a good friend of mine, it would kill me. I spent about 6 weeks, I think, not drinking. Felt like a zombie. I had nothing to substitute for it. I didn't do what I thought alcoholics did. I didn't shake and tremble and run around saying, oh, my God, I got to have a drink, I got to have a drink. I just felt like nothing was there. And so I went back and I took one drink of alcohol, and sure enough, it didn't kill me. Drank a margarita. Drank another margarita at this party that I was at. And then I didn't drink anything else that day. That was a Saturday. I didn't drink anything on Sunday. I went back to work after that, and I don't know. All I know about what after that was that I was right back where I was before. December the 13th, 1979 was a Thursday. The Monday before that, I started a trial of a real important case, and I could not function. I could not function. But I tried, and I stumbled, and I fumbled, and I got through Monday, and I got through Tuesday, and by Wednesday, I really was completely out of it, and I knew I just couldn't do it, and I had to go home, and I had to put it together so that Thursday morning I could wake up real early, and I'm an early riser, and get all my stuff together and get ready to do the things that I needed to do on Thursday. Unbeknownst to me, for a long, long time after that, the judge, who also was, and he was in fact my best friend, and also was one of the finest judges in the state of Texas. He was concerned about me, and he knew what was happening, and he had been calling that Wednesday night friends of mine, wanting to figure out what to do. And what happened was that Thursday morning, I walked into the courtroom, and he called me into his office, and he said, "Bob, I don't know what's the matter with you. I don't know whether you're drinking too much or whether you're just sick, but you're not making any sense, and we can't have this case continue. I'm going to discharge this jury. I'm going to call your brother and have him put you in the hospital to find out what's wrong with you." And that tore it. That was the end. The one thing in my life that I was proud of, the one thing in my life that I had accomplished was I was a good lawyer. And I had seen what was happening, what happened to me that day. I had seen it happen to other people. And people had talked to me about what was happening to me. And they would say, "Bob, you're ruining yourself." And I would laugh at them, and I would say, "Hell, I'm a better lawyer drunk than most of these dumbasses are sober, you know." And on December the 13th, 1979, before that, I had made more money that year than I had ever made before in my life, and I made some pretty good money from time to time. But I had been successful, forcing myself into doing it. I didn't have any of it, you know. I had blown it all. And my younger brother, only brother I got, 12 years younger than I am, came over to the courthouse, and he was absolutely disgusted, and I was so ashamed. And what I can remember, the only thing I remember saying to him was, "Bill, it's pride. Don't ever let your pride get you where mine's gotten me." And he took me to the hospital, and I woke up, and everybody suggested I go to this treatment center. And I went to this treatment center up in the hill country. I didn't want to go because I had made up my mind when I woke up in the hospital that I wasn't ever going to drink again. It didn't ever occur to me that I'd made up my mind to that every damn day for the last 8 years, you know. And there wasn't anything much different this day than any other day, but that's what I didn't want to go to that place up there. I really didn't know exactly what the place was going to do for me or to me. But I got up there, and they gave me that blue book. Mine's now in this cover here. And they started reading the book to me, and that was the silliest thing I ever heard of. Hell, I knew how to read. I didn't need anybody to read to me. And a lot of the stuff in there I thought was pretty silly. And we talked, you know, people talked about things that live one day at a time. Well, I knew they weren't my kind of people, you know, because I had to plan everything, and I had to have everything organized, or at least I tried to get it organized. I never was able to do it. Anyway, I didn't like the deal at all. But I really didn't want to drink anymore, you know. And finally, and really the only thing that they did back in those days at that treatment center was have AA meetings every day and sit up on top of this hill and look at all these people that were crazy and come to the idea that, hell, if I'm in this place with all these crazy people, I must be crazy too. There's some of those crazy people that are here today, as a matter of fact. And not drink is what we did there. We didn't drink. I left there and I told the guy that ran that place, when I stayed the entire time, I told him that I'd really learned a lot, and I had learned a lot. But I told him the only thing, I was going back to church, but the one thing I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to go to any of those meetings, not because I thought I was better than people in Alcoholics Anonymous, although of course that's exactly what I thought, but because I didn't like to sit in meetings. And he said, "What's the matter, Bob? When you're in one of those meetings, does it keep you from drinking?" And so I went to one of those meetings when I got back, and I didn't like that either. You know, they didn't reach and grab my hand and tell me how important I was. They didn't do anything except, they talked about things that people talk about in AA meetings. But I went back, and and I kept going back, and I didn't drink. And after a while, somebody told me they thought I was looking a lot better, which kind of made me angry because I thought I'd been looking pretty good by the time I got there, Then after several months, some guy, smart aleck guy, walked up to me and said, "Bob, you're not ever going to make it in this program." I said, "Why? What are you talking about?" He said, "You're too damn smart. You need to get yourself a sponsor and start working these steps." And I said, "God, I do." Because, see, I was too egotistical to ask anybody to help me, But I knew I needed a sponsor, and I knew that I needed to do that, And so, God, when this guy said that, I was so happy. I said, "You're right. Will you be my sponsor?" And he said, "No," and turned around and walked off. So I broke down and got one, Of course, I had realized that I was powerless over alcohol. First thing that happened to me when I got to that treatment center and they told me that, I realized, my God, that's the deal. That's the problem. I'm powerless over this. It never occurred to me in my life. I knew I was an alcoholic since I was 16 years old, but it never occurred to me that I was powerless, I thought I was supposed to control all of this stuff, and I couldn't do that, and I didn't know why. And, you all told me, hell, I'm powerless. I was a little bit concerned about this, but I was willing to accept the power greater than I was could restore me to sanity part of it. But I didn't have any intention of turning my life or my will over to God or any other power or any other person. I didn't mind turning the drinking over, but there were some other things in my life. Because I was pretty sure that the God that I understood, the God I had learned about as a child, was not going to approve of the way I did some of my other living, see, and I wasn't prepared to turn any of that over. I wasn't too sure that God understood that much about me. So I had a lot of trouble with that. But I finally got to the point to where, like I guess all of us do that hang around for a while, I either had to make the decision to do that or I had to start drinking again. And I didn't want to drink anymore, so I got with my sponsor and I made that decision. I didn't understand God then. And I don't understand God now, I've come to the conclusion that if I understood all there was to understand about God, I'd be right back where I was to start with and think it was me, or my will, or my super intellect, And I know that's not so. But it's okay with me now. That's another one of those terms that I heard when I first got to this program that was magic to me. No matter what, and it was frustrating, but it was magic. No matter what happened, no matter what crises was going on in my life, I'd run to my sponsor, or I'd run to somebody like a friend of mine named Skeeter, who was a farmer down in Calhoun County. And I'd, golly, tell them all of this stuff and this horrible crises and what people were doing to me and what, and they'd say, "It's okay. It's going to be okay. Don't drink. Keep coming back. Do what you're supposed to do, and it's going to be okay." And that was the truth. I didn't understand it then, but it was the truth. It doesn't make any difference now to me what's going on. If I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, then that's all I can do, and there ain't any point in getting upset about it because it's going to be okay. One of these days they're going to bury me down in the ground. They've buried everybody else that's come along so far. And when they do, I'm not ready today like I was 17 plus years ago for them to do that. But if they do it and I'm not ready, it's going to be okay. You know. Probably the world will keep on going, whether I'm here or not. God, I hate to think that, but it's a fact. It's a fact. I found out after I stayed around for a while that everything that I had learned about how to live was wrong. I had to unlearn so many of the lessons that I had learned. I'm not suggesting that what people tried to teach me was wrong. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But what I learned was wrong. And I had to start adopting the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous as a way of life. And in order to do that, of course, I had to go through the other steps. And it was pretty difficult to do that. But and I'm still doing it, you know. I'm still trying to make amends. I'm still trying to, because new things come up that I think about that have happened. Although I have found out that, contrary to the way I thought it was to begin with, I hadn't harmed near as many people as I thought I had, When I told a guy with a large bulbous nose on the dance floor when I was drunk that I would punch him in the nose, but my fist wasn't big enough. That didn't offend him, It made me look like an idiot. But I don't think that in the grand scheme of things I necessarily needed to apologize to him. I did apologize to a guy who was a real good friend of mine who I tore up his house in a drunken rage one night, to the extent that the next day he advised me and all of the people that we were with that the reason that God had put me on this earth was so that everybody else would look good. When I sobered up, I tried to make some amends to him, I needed to make amends to my family. I needed to make amends to my profession. And more than anybody else, I needed to make amends to me. Because contrary to what some people in the program that I have heard have said, I thought that everything that happened in the world that didn't go right was my fault. That's how much of an egotistical fellow that I am, I thought I was I thought I was that Atlas guy, that you see with the world on his back, holding it up, and that was my job to get everybody straightened out. And, of course, one of the things I found out was that nobody was interested in me straightening them out. And what I also found out was that I had enough of a job trying to straighten myself out. And one of the things that has given me some peace, some great peace today, is when I can remember that my job is not to judge or to figure out what other people ought to be doing. My job is to figure out what I need to be doing. And this is just a personal opinion, but I see an awful lot of what goes on in the world that I live in, of people with all of our great news media and information age and so forth, is people trying to decide how other people ought to be living their lives. I learned in this program from a fellow from Flower Bluff down here not far from Corpus Christi, or part of Corpus Christi. He said one day something that I thought was real profound. He said that everybody is doing what they think they ought to be doing. And that's probably right. And I heard in this very room from a lady from California one day that I'm just one of God's kids, and that we're all God's kids, and that God loves all His kids. And that's pretty powerful to me, and it's a little bit scary, because if that's a fact, then God loves Saddam Hussein, and God loves the lady over in from Fort Worth or Kerrville that was just convicted of murdering her 2 children. The sorriest guy, the guy that I can judge as the sorriest guy on earth, is a child of God. God loves them, you know. So who am I? Who am I to be telling them what to do? I don't know. So I try not to do that anymore. I'm not always successful at it, And that's one of the paradoxes of my life. Because after I was sober for about little over 4 years, and had discovered, instead of the fact that I was a better lawyer drunk than all these other lawyers were sober, when I discovered that I was a better lawyer sober than I was drunk, and I didn't have to compare myself to anybody else, that if I did what I was supposed to be doing, I could get along pretty good, and I could be comfortable with the job that I did, and I didn't have to worry about what those other people were doing. After I'd been doing that for a while, the most remarkable thing happened in my life. As a matter of fact, a little bit before 4.5 years, that same judge that had thrown me out of the courthouse, that had ended my career as a lawyer, I thought. But of course, I had gone back and become more successful and a better lawyer and a reliable, better person, recommended me for a position. And as a result of that recommendation from that same guy, 4.5 years later, I wound up being appointed by the governor of the state of Texas as a justice or a judge on the appellate court, which in Corpus Christi, which covers the Victoria area and covers the area that goes from the Rio Grande Valley almost up to Houston. And it's the second highest court in the state of Texas that supervise. We judge the judges, you know. And here I am, thinking, what in the world is a guy like me doing in a place like this? Judging all of these people because see, I don't know how to judge anything. That's not right. I know a little bit about the law. I studied the law. I've got experience. I was a good lawyer, and I've got some experience in life, and so I can, as fair as anybody can, fairer than some maybe, on what the laws of the state of Texas are. But as far as God's opinion of the people that I'm judging or the issues that I'm judging, God, I don't know any more about that than anybody does, because I'm just one of God's kids too. That was in April of 1984 that I was appointed to this court. I stood for election 5 times, and one of the things that I have advised those people who are interested in my qualifications, and from the first time on, the first thing that I told them was that you're going to hear some bad stories about me, because I used to drink a lot. And when I was drinking, I did some things that I'm not very proud of. But I don't do that anymore. And as time has gone on, I haven't done it one day at a time, and it's now a little over 17 years. And you know what happened? It's kind of like, if you're in the law or if you know anything about it, it's kind of like getting immunity, they can't prosecute you but once, and if the state grants you immunity so that you tell all, and make a clean breast of it, they promise that they're not going to prosecute you. As long as you do that, it don't make any difference what you tell them, as long as you tell them the truth. And so I've got immunity now. See, I don't care. I'm pretty free. I don't care what people say about what I used to do, because I can say, yeah, Number one, I can say, yeah, I did that. Or number two, I can say, God, I don't remember that. But there was an awful lot of stuff that I don't remember. So maybe I did. But I remember what I've done in the last 17 years. I remember dadgum near all of it. And I don't do that anymore. You know? Golly, that's freedom. This program has given me the freedom to live happy, joyous, and free and comfortable most of my life. This is a pretty political area geographically that we live in here in the South Texas. There are 6 judges on this court that I serve on, and we sit in panels of 3. In 1993, the guy who had been the Chief Justice, who's kind of the highest judge in South Texas, retired. Conventional wisdom was that either a woman or an Hispanic woman would be named to replace that person. I'm now the Chief Justice of the 13th Court of Appeals. And you know, I look out of my office sometimes on the top floor of the courthouse here in Nueces County, and I can see down on Leopard Street, and I can see some of the people on that street. And there ain't any difference between those guys and me. There's only one difference between them, and that is that for a reason known only to God, I've been given the opportunity and the ability to practice the principles of this program. So professionally, my life has been, and from a community service standpoint, my life has been pretty neat, remarkable, miraculous. Personally, it's the same thing. I've got now 4 children, which is what I've had for a long time. I got 6 grandchildren. In October of 1979, my first grandchild was born. It was a daughter, and we lived in Victoria. And I was on with my wife, and I still got the same wife. She's really sick, but that's one of the good things that I did early on. You know, I married a good, kind, understanding, and sick lady. On our way to Austin, where she was born, my wife told me that if I kept living the way I was living, I would never live to see my grandchild, grow up. My thought was that that would probably be a good idea, because as sorry and as worthless as so-and-so as I was, she'd be a lot better off not really knowing a guy like me. She and my other 5 grandchildren now think I'm a pretty neat guy. She's a beautiful 17-year-old girl, and they all call me Peepaw, and that's one of the great rewards of being sober. My youngest child is 33 years, will be 33 years old Sunday. He's had a hard time adjusting to life, and a lot of that was because of the way I treated him when he was a child. I was pretty abusive. Never hit him. Well, I did hit him some, but I didn't hit him in the face. I spanked him pretty hard. But I put bad words on people pretty good. I learned that as a trial lawyer. And about 3 years ago, and he'd had a lot of trouble with a lot of things, you know, with law, with drugs, with the society that we live in. And he just disappeared. Got in his car and started driving. Drove it till it ran out of gas, and just kept going. And we didn't know anything about him for a couple of years. This past summer, early summer, he contacted us, and he was in the state of Washington, and he had gotten straightened out. And I have a mother, my only mother, was 90 years old on January the 1st, and my brother and I were planning a surprise 90th birthday party for her.